Eric Osterhaus is here with us to talk about the markets from the week. And Eric, these markets, particularly the grain markets, have gotten very, very quiet. And you mentioned before we went on the air that they've been kind of range bound and they're pretty quiet here over the last couple of weeks. I suppose the biggest thing this week that happened was the fact we had the export sales numbers. I didn't really see anything in that stood out to me other than the fact that we're still way behind on our corn exports.
Yeah, that has been concerning. We've talked about it before. It really doesn't seem to be changing too dramatically. We're quite a ways behind what our expectations have been. The only, I guess, slightly friendly thing we've been seeing the last several days to week or two is just that on ethanol, we're finally starting to see a little profitability start to creep back in there. So there's some hope that maybe a little bit of an increase in demand on the ethanol side of the equation for corn might offset a little bit of this downside that we've been seeing here on our exports. But we do have a lot of ground to make up. I know a lot of folks are hoping that if we do manage to sign some sort of a deal with China, that in addition to maybe soybeans and pork, we might see some corn and ethanol flow their way as well. But as we've talked about before, that hasn't showed up just yet.
You looking for, or is the trade looking for much change in this next World Supply and Demand estimate that'll be out that second week of November?
Well, I don't know that there's a whole lot of over optimism in regards to seeing some better numbers there on our carryout numbers, in particular for corn, just because of the reasons we just talked about. Even if we do start seeing some of those exports popping up, it's going to take a little while for that to show into that USDA report on a monthly basis. The only thing we've seen, at least locally and in some of these areas here in the Corn Belt, is that because of the delays in harvest, we've seen basis actually staying fairly strong into harvest time. Usually we start to see a pretty weakening basis going in as folks are harvesting, but there's been obviously a delay all year and everything as regards to our crop. So at least, markets have been kind of sideways on futures, but basis has hung in there. So there's a little silver lining, I think.
Okay. Let's break down into soybeans then and talk a little bit about that. Those export numbers seem to be running not even respectable, but even just a little bit ahead of what some of the expectations or some of the history would show us.
Yes, and that has been, a pleasant surprise. Again, we haven't seen futures actually take a jump higher since the news broke with our partial deal, but our exports have been coming along. It just feels like the market's just a little uncertain yet. I think we can make another move higher once, again, we see something a little more solid. That seems to be what everybody's waiting around for, is something signed on paper. I know there was some concern regarding Chile canceling that APEC conference that was due down there. Again, there was hope that Xi and Trump would meet there and hopefully sign something or at least push something further along. So that kind of had a setback here this last week, and I think the markets reflected that. But again, regardless of what happens with that, we do want to keep seeing these soybean exports work higher.
And the wheat export number was a little bit better than last week, but still not anything really to get too excited about. I got 30 seconds here. What do you think of the wheat market?
I think until we have something to come out that really scares us on the production side, not only here, we need something overseas in that Black Sea region. I hate to say it, but we tend to follow what's going on in the Black Sea these days, and they haven't had a production scare in a long time.
Well, and I saw earlier where that some of these countries are looking for milling wheat, but they're going to hold off a little bit for whatever reason. I heard it was some of it was logistics as well, but some of it's got to do with price as well. What's the address, the web address?
www.myagadvisor.com and 888-452-8751.